Caolan Robertson now from Rebel Media TV, and he can give us an update on Anne-Marie Waters and her disturbing Twitter feed. Caolan, thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
So, what's happened then? Give us the information.
Well, I've just spoken with Anne-Marie, and I'm actually not able to give too much information about it right now. And basically, I was with her just sort of an hour before, and we were doing a couple of campaign videos about her UKIP manifesto. Mm-hmm. And ironically, we were just talking about how the police state has basically made a comeback again after the 2013, 14, 15 year of Tommy Robinson's book. And a sort of half an hour after I dropped her off at Sloane Square Station, obviously she tweeted that, and it was quite hard to get hold of her because obviously she had said she had been detained somehow. But right now we obviously can't say, because it's like an ongoing thing she's dealing with, we can't say exactly the reason for that. But it ties in totally to what's been going on with, well, I think it ties into what's been going on with Tommy Robinson's recent arrest, and with an increased police presence constantly around all of us. I just heard you talking to your guest then about how you're surprised I've not been the next person to be arrested, which is something that, of course, we've already been thinking about. So that's kind of the only thing I can really say about it right now.
All right, hang on. Let me just zone in on you for a second. I don't know how many people are listening in the audience will be familiar with your work. Probably a higher proportion on most other radio stations. The reason being that you've dealt strictly with Islamist terror in a pretty straightforward manner on your YouTube channel. And then you came to prominence when you were next to Tommy Robinson after the London attacks, and he went into his kind of viral rant. And I said I felt sympathy for you before because you were kind of there as a broadcaster, and he just eloquently took down what happened, used his crystal ball, or some people would say looked at the past and history, predicted on the money what had happened with the terror attack, basically, and then left. And you're left with a microphone in your hand, perhaps a little unsure of what to say, and left with it was a powerful video. What I'm saying though is, to me, it struck me as you might be someone who's walked into the hurricane unaware of how big this hurricane is and the dangers you're taking. Am I wrong?
No, you're totally right. I mean, I was relatively aware. I'd already been reading Tommy Robinson's book about what had been happening to him for years with the police state. And, I was skeptical because I thought, how in the UK can something like that actually exist? How can there be no-go zones? How can there be Orwellian control like this? And it wasn't until all the stuff that I've been witnessing over the last few months came to light that, I got completely tied into it.
Let me tell you something, mate. There's been a number of times when I've watched you on this YouTube thing, and you have, and I don't mean this as a slight, I actually mean this as a compliment. I've spent a good 10 years in radio, and I've been out of my depth on occasion. So I don't mean this as having a go, but there do seem to be moments where you have the look of someone who's ever so slightly out of their depth. I admire you for that, by the way. I've not swum out as far in the water as you have. But what are you going to do? I mean, you've got involved in this story. You've got involved in this now. You're stood next to probably one of the most ardent decriers of Islam, Tommy Robinson. You're very identified with him. I mean, how are you feeling in yourself?
Obviously, it's worrying. I have to move from my apartment because people have been turning up, taking photos of the front door. People have been sending photos of me from my living room from across the Vale, from across the King's Road. So obviously,
wait a minute. Why the hell did you do that, by the way? And for people who are not familiar with this guy's work, you did a video where you were basically filming outside your house. I was very surprised when you did it.
I did it in response to Antifa, who had leaked my address publicly. So everybody already had known where I lived. This is post. And so I decided, instead of being super terrified and cowering to these people, I decided immediately after they had published my address, after they had turned up at my house, to do a video and say, well, you know what, this is where I live. I don't really care anymore. You think you can intimidate me? You think you can silence all of us by using these crappy tactics? So it's not going to work. This is where I live. This is my front door. Look how beautiful this area I live in is. Look how wonderful it is. Why don't you come over for some tea or some champagne? Just to take the piss out of them. It's the only way that they should be dealt with. Now obviously I'm just moving, for security reasons, obviously, because everything has escalated so quickly, massive lifestyle changes. But it just gives us more ammo. It just gives me more
Let me tell you, I don't want you to take me laughing the wrong way. I laughed there because I think you were being deliberately amusing. Come round for some tea or champagne, and I like that in your work. And this is what I'm saying. I think you wear your heart on your sleeve. Your face is very easy to read. And there's a number of moments when I thought he looks out of his depth, which I'm not decrying that. I think that's actually part of the appeal of what you're doing. Is that really a lot of people who are coming. I mean, how old are you? You look quite young. How old are you?
I turned 23 last week.
23, Jesus, and he's got involved in this. Okay, so, you look younger, and, people are saying you're a Milo type. I don't know how many people will be familiar with Milo, but you're clearly influenced by him, right? I'm just wondering to myself, what's the end game for you? I said exactly the same thing to Tommy Robinson, by the way. Do you know what I said to him? I said, go live in America in a bunker with a gun. Like, get out of this situation. We want soldiers in those situations, not civilians. Like, what is your long-term plan, mate? What do you think you're going to win the... I'm not saying you're not going to, but, where are you going with it?
Well, my original career goal was totally separate to this. I was working in a really nice advertising job in central London and working with liberal elitists, and I wanted to have a great career in all of that. But as soon as we got swept up in all of this, I just realized that the main thing that drives me, the main thing that I want to keep doing is just keep exposing all of the people in the UK, exposing the police state, exposing the people who have threatened anybody who doesn't agree with far-left Marxist nonsense, and just basically reporting on all of these things that have never been talked about in the mainstream media. And that's literally now my long-term thing, just to keep going, to grow in numbers, to keep educating people, to keep influencing people, and just to grow as large as possible.
Why? I don't. But hang on, I don't get it. This is what I mean. And like I say, I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm just trying to understand. And I don't. What do you get from it? I mean, I guess you get a certain amount of fame from it, but that's an empty meal, my friend. I'm warning you on that one.
It's nothing to do with fame. When I started realizing what was actually going on in the UK, it was so infuriating that the only way I could deal with it was to want to go outside and scream and tell everybody about it, because it's so annoying, and it's the only way I can actually comprehend what's the way that this country is going.
And hang on. So let's just qualify what it is. So you were so annoyed by it that you wanted to scream. What it are we describing? What do you mean?
Well, huge numbers of huge different types of things. So from the far left dominated media, which has completely whitewashed anything to do with any narratives that don't suit theirs, to do with basically all the stuff that Tommy's dealt with, to do with the police state influence in his life, to do with the media trying to silence people, to do with jihadis being let off, to roam the streets of the UK and just left on some sort of watch list. I could go on for hours.
Right. Okay. So I can empathise in this sense. Is that I remember thinking to myself when I was maybe your age, and I'm not really not patronising. I'm an admirer of your work. But what I'm saying is, I remember being about 23 and thinking, all right, I want to take on the establishment and show everyone what's going on. And I did a load of talk shows and stuff, but I didn't end up stood next to someone who's standing to be an MP, being arrested by the police, knocking around with a guy who the intelligence services wanted to have work for him. Tommy Robinson, for anyone who doesn't know, was apparently, asked by the intelligence services to work for him. They wanted him to unite the right. This kind of sounds sci-fi. This is real. It's Googleable. And this guy that I'm talking to, Caolan Robertson, right in the epicenter of it. I mean, you pretty much start in the epicenter of one of the most peculiar stories I've ever seen in my broadcasting history, where I feel out of my depth watching it, and you're right in the center of it. And this is what I'm saying is your end game with this. Do you expect to go back to a normal life 20 years from now, 10 years from now? What are you expecting? I can never go back
to a normal life.
Right, no, sure, and you're not going to be making much money. And this is the other thing, you're not going to be making much money doing this, I'm guessing. And so, what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to talk you out of it, but I mean, what about your family, your friends, your parents? How are they reacting to this as you throw yourself into the centre of criminal gangs, MI5, it's like a spy film, but it's actually happening on my Twitter feeds. I'm watching it every day. There's a point when this guy, I'm just telling the audience, he was in a hotel. He said, we're in a hotel. We can't get out. We can't tell you where we are. Right? Because they've been driven off the road by Islamist gangs. Jesus, that's journalism, by the way, for any of my colleagues who are listening. That's journalism. But what I'm saying to you, mate, is what do you psychologically do at the end of a day like that where you think, okay, my life's not going to be normal anymore?
Well, my life was never really normal. I mean, I came to the UK without support from anybody. Okay, sorry, to London without support from anybody, moving out of my parents' home a few years ago. I don't really have a close relationship with them or anything like that. They would totally disapprove of all of this sort of stuff, but I don't really speak to them anyway, so I'm totally alone in all this anyway. So that aspect is already out of the way. And, of course, I'm unhireable now forever in any sort of liberal advertising world, but that's totally fine. I think, regardless of money or anything like that, I genuinely think what Tommy and I are doing and what the Rebel is doing is so fundamentally important and is making such a difference in the UK that it's totally worth it, regardless of whose career does what, who makes the most money, how perfect everything will be in 20 years. I'm just kind of focusing on the next 2 or 3 years of just expanding and growing and telling. So
I'm just going to ask you, so what are we saying? I mean, I've gone into this a bit deeper than we thought. I was just going to have a quick chat with you, but like I say, I'm a fan of your work. So what is it? Is it a difficult childhood and then you've got a different sense of danger? Is that it, to put it in a nutshell?
No, nothing like that. My childhood was totally average. I've always been someone who wanted to go out and do their own thing and just be totally independent. And that's why I moved to London.
You must have mates who've said to you, mate, back off from this one. This is too much.
I didn't have any friends that I did 2 years ago. Every single person I know now are people I've met in the last 12 months because everybody stopped speaking to me because they are young and they're liberal and they don't like what I'm saying. So there we go.
And let me tell you, I wish you luck. I'd love to do a longer interview with that guy at some point. Caolan Robertson, you heard what he said about Anne-Marie Waters. Okay, we'll wait for more information on that. We're glad to hear the information that he's given us. But I find him a fascinating bloke, him. What's the deal? He's exactly as he sounds. He's exactly as he sounds, wide-eyed and boom, right in the centre of it. And he pretty much materialises on the internet from nowhere into some of the most intense situations I've ever seen. It's like he's living in some sort of awful Orwellian twisted nightmare reality TV show. And that's how I've consumed his stuff. I've watched him and Tommy Robinson and the
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.